Good evening, everybody. Twin Blades, Acolytes, friends, and passers-by. Welcome to the stream. My name is Ruin. How's it going? It's kind of an odd Monday Magic Madness episode today. Gonna be just the first part of the stream. I'm gonna go through Laggy 13's Sean Laggy 13, aka Sean's deck that he um, asked for, submitted channel points for, um, which is an augmentation of the D&D Commander product, specifically the Wizard deck that we went through a couple weeks ago now. Just kind of going through the deck as a whole, breaking it down, seeing what was in it, because obviously I had never played it at that point. I still have yet to play it. So, but yeah, so that's on the menu tonight, and then round 7, little after 7, I guess, whenever we finish the deck tech, and we have everybody start grouping up, then we'll switch over to the D&D night, to Dark Alliance. Excuse me, to the D&D Dark Alliance game that we started / tried to play this past Thursday. So hopefully we'll be able to get everybody together and that will work for us. That'll be the main thing. So yeah, let me, I guess, go ahead and get some music going here and actually turn it on for you guys this time, so I don't look like an idiot with the updates over here being completely worthless to you like it did last time I did a tech. But yeah, so let me get this on here. So we'll start with kind of the breakdown of the deck as a whole, which can also increase here just so you guys can see it better. But yeah, so this is the deck. This is what I call Mindswipe. So obviously still the same colors. It is Commander. I switched the actual Commander in it, though. We're not using I don't remember what her name is. The human wizard. For it, we're using Nihilor, which is the legendary creature horror for 2 generic and Esper, which is white, blue, black, for a 3/5 legendary creature horror that says when it enters the battlefield, for each opponent, tap up to 1 untapped creature that you control, and if you do, gain control of a target creature that player controls with power less than or equal to the tapped creature's power for as long as you control Nihilor. And then whenever you attack with a creature an opponent owns, you gain 2 life and that player loses 2 life. So it is a steel stuff deck, which is kind of why I wanted to do Mindswipe. Because we actually, excuse me, we don't have red, which is very much in the same vein of stealing stuff from your opponents. But that would normally chuck the creatures at opponents' faces. Like, that's how you sacrifice. So a lot of what you see in steely decks is you either take the things and can keep them permanently, or as long as the thing that is on the board, like this does, as long as this is on the board, you keep that creature. Or, like I say, permanently for a certain amount of time, or you use those creatures if you can't keep them for any amount of time. You use them for resources, or just absolutely sacrifice it for no necessary win, but it prevents you from returning the permanent to your opponent. So we have, honestly, a decent curve. This is Commander, so it's not bad in general. We have the highest at 3 We have a nice ramp, 6 to 11 to 18. So we've got some bigger beefy boys towards the end, but we're mainly blue. We're almost half blue, which, because we don't have red, we're basically dependent upon blue for all the steely stuff. Because usually it's red-blue that does that specifically. That's what grabs a lot of the items. And then we're a quarter black and just under a quarter white. So we don't have as much white. But we've got 34 lands, 28 creatures, 7 enchantments, 11 instants, 9 sorceries, and 15 artifacts. Another deck that we don't have any planeswalkers in. There's not really... the only steel planeswalker that I even know of is... Nico Bolas, which isn't even in the right colors. He has red in his color identity, so not really any grand options for our theme in the realm of planeswalkers. So approximate value is $720, which for a commander deck, and you've got blue, the vast majority of your deck is blue. That's not terrible in the grand scheme of things, to be perfectly honest. I did have a card in here that was $130 some odd by itself at one point, and definitely cut that one. Did not realize that it was that much when I put it in here. But yeah, so I took this, what you see here, and basically broke it down into different themes, into different items, like I did for Tiger's deck a couple days ago. So these things steal one item, one permanent. So we have Agent of Treachery, which is actually a fairly new card. When it enters the battlefield, you gain control of target permanent, any permanent. And then at the beginning of your end step, if you control 3 or more permanents that you don't own, you can draw 3 cards. So it's card advantage 2, honestly, in this type of deck. But it is a 2/3 human rogue for 7, which is kind of on the high end, but it does what we want it to do. And the beauty of this one is it's not until it leaves the battlefield. It is, you literally gain control of it for the rest of the game, basically. You don't have to return it, which a lot of these things do. Bribery is a sorcery for 5, 3, and 2 blue, which is obviously an older card. It's from set 8, 8th edition. And you can search target opponent's library for a creature card and put it into the battlefield under your control, and then that player shuffles his or her library. So you just get any creature still in their deck for free. Well, you have to pay the mana cost, but you basically get your choice. Choose an opponent that you think has the best creatures, or, even utility creatures, and have at it. Honestly, it's a pretty good card. Dothy Voidwalker, which is a 2 black for a 3/2 rogue with Shadow, which means that it can't block or be blocked except by other creatures with Shadow, which there are very few of those. And if a card would be put into a graveyard from anywhere, you exile it with a void counter on it. And then, as long as it's on the field, or this thing gets targeted by a removal spell, you can just tap it and sack it, and you choose one of those cards that were exiled, and you put it into play without paying its mana cost. So technically you can do that for any permanent. So lands, enchantments, planeswalkers, creatures, artifacts, whatever. It doesn't matter. Honestly, came out fairly recently. It's literally this year. I don't know the set. I think it might be a Masters set, but don't quote me on that. But new card, honestly, decent card especially for just 2 mana. It's pretty cool ability. Dragon Lord Silumgar. Good old Dragons of Tarkir. For 4 blue and a black for a 3/5 Elder Dragon. With flying and death touch. Always a decent combo. And when it enters the battlefield, gain control of target creature or planeswalker for as long as you control Dragonlord Silumgar. Honestly, not bad. Flyer 3/5, steals something when it comes in, has flying and death touch. All around decent card for this deck. Extract Brain, which was actually a card in the deck already. For X, blue and black. Target opponent chooses X cards from their hand, so you probably want to play this for as many cards as in their hand. And then you get to look at those cards and play a spell from among them without paying its mana cost. So, it's kind of a crapshoot, but honestly, art's dope, effects not bad, and for the mana that you're spending for this card, you probably would have to expend to play the card that you're finding. So, all around, not a bad trade offer. Gonti, Lord of Luxury, in quite a few black decks. Fairly popular card. 2 and 2 black for an Aetherborn Rogue, which I think Aetherborn are dope. If you don't know what Aetherborn are in MTG, look them up. It's a cool concept. 2/3 with Death Touch. When it enters the battlefield, look at the top 4 cards of target opponent's library. Exile 1 face down, and put the rest on the bottom of that library in a random order. For as long as that card remains exiled, you may look at it. You may cast it, and you may spend mana of any color. Oh, sorry. You may spend mana as though it were mana of any type to cast it. So, steal something off the top 4 cards of your opponent's library, and says as long as it remains exiled. I believe that's as long as Gonti's on the field. Which also makes it dope because you can basically play it whenever the heck you want. Hostage Taker is basically a staple in any Steely deck if it's got blue and black in it. 2 blue-black for a 2/3 human pirate. When it enters the battlefield, you can exile an artifact or a creature, which is different. Hey, we actually have an artifact specified. Until it leaves the battlefield, you may cast that card for as long as it remains exiled, and you may spend mana as though it were any mana type to cast that spell. So the beauty of these things is when you play the card that they're exiling, then you can flicker them, which will come later. So next is the Mind Flayer, which is 3 and 2 blue. I figured our commander shouldn't be the only one of its creature type, so we've got another Mind Flayer. 3/3 for a horror, dominate monster. When Mind Flayer enters the battlefield, gain control of target creature for as long as you control Mind Flayer. So this one you can't flicker as well, but it has a similar effect to Nihilor anyway. Sower of Temptation, 2 and 2 blue for a 2/2 fairy wizard with flying. When it enters the battlefield, gain control of target creature for as long as you control Sower of Temptation. Ta-da! And then Minions Return is an aura for 2 and 1 black, has flash, so you can play it at instant speed, and you enchant any creature. And when the enchanted creature dies, return that card to the battlefield under your control. So that one's you don't not one you even have to return. Once you, because you can instant throw this thing on something that may be dying before damage actually takes effect, you could respond, put this on the stack, it resolves first, and then the damage does, and then you get the free thingamabob, whatever it may be. Well, creature, I guess technically in this case. But I thought it was kind of dope art. And it's a new card. It came out, I say new. Came out in the Return to Theros. I cannot remember what the actual set symbol is for that one, but yeah. So those were your Steel 1 permanent, at least each effect. And then these are your Steel multiple for each effect. So Nihilor we already went through. He's your commander. Blatant Thievery for 4 and 3 blue. Hefty price, but it does a good thing. For each opponent, gain control of target permanent that player controls. So these things have to be on the battlefield, but you get to choose basically any permanent on their battlefield and it becomes yours. Excuse me. Cunning Rhetoric. Enchantment for 2 and a black. Whenever an opponent attacks you and or one of your planeswalkers, exile the top card of that player's library. You may play that card for as long as it remains exiled. And you may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast it. So, if people would like to attack you, they get to pay the price by milling themselves, well, stripping one card off their deck, and then allowing you to play it. Don't know how often you're going to get that, but it's basically a God, the card just left my brain. There's several enchantments that, and artifacts for that matter, that prevent people from attacking you unless they pay mana, or only allow them to attack with a certain amount of creatures each turn. So this one is one of those with even more of an upside, at least for you. Mass Manipulation. XX and 4 blue. Gain control of X target creatures and or planeswalkers. Hefty, but at the very least, this is what, 4, 5, 6, this is 7 mana if you want one permanent. Creature or planeswalker from each person. So, I mean, based on the card size, that's not terrible. That we've been running through for this deck. King Narfi's Betrayal. 1 blue and black for an enchantment saga. So this is our first saga I think I've actually thrown in one of these decks. So chapter 1, each player mills 4 cards. Then you may exile a creature or planeswalker card from each graveyard. And then chapter 2 and 3, so it triggers twice. Until the end of turn, you may cast spells from among cards exiled with King Narfi's Betrayal. And you may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast those spells. So, you're getting, 16 cards in a 4-man group. And you get to choose 2 of them. Well, no, I guess technically you can choose more than that. From among those 16, you can choose as many as you have mana for the next 2 turns to cast with anything, with any mana. Mind's Dilation. Now this was in Tiger's deck as well. So 5 and 2 blue for an enchantment that whenever an opponent casts his or her first spell each turn, that player exiles the top card of his or her library. If it's a non-land card, you may cast it without paying its mana cost. Again, we stealing stuff, boys. Mnemonic Betrayal. This is in the deck already. But 1 blue black for a sorcery. Exile all cards from all opponents' graveyards. And you may cast those cards this turn. You may spend mana as though it were any mana type to cast those spells. And at the beginning of the next end step, if any of those cards remain exiled, return them to their owner's graveyards. And you exile Mnemonic Betrayal. Just stealing more stuff. You know, that's a trend in this deck. Rod of Absorption, which is also already in the deck. 2 and a black for an artifact. Whenever a player casts an instant or sorcery spell, exile it instead of putting it into the graveyard as it resolves. And then for X and tap, you can then sacrifice the rod, and you may cast any number of spells from among the cards exiled with it, with total mana value X or less without paying their mana cost. This could honestly be, if you've got enough mana, quite a few spells. Because this is any instant or sorcery spells. So, and this is any number, and you may. So you get to target that. So if you have stuff that's like a wrath, somebody already wrathed the board, you can circumvent the wrath. It is targeted. So you get to choose which ones you're picking. And this is any player, so it includes you. So any instants or sorceries that you cast or your opponents cast get exiled instead of thrown into the graveyard. And then when you decide to pop it, pop the rod, have at it. Sepulchre Primordial, which I believe is in the deck already. 5 and 2 black for a 5/4 avatar with Intimidate, which means has to be an artifact or a black creature to block. Excuse me. When it enters the battlefield for each opponent, you may put up to 1 target creature card from that player's graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. Thief Sanity, 1 and blue and black for a 2/2 Spectre that flies. When it deals combat damage to a player, look at the top 3 cards of that player's library, exile 1 of them face down, put the rest into their graveyard. For as long as that card remains exiled, you may look at it, you may cast it, and you may spend mana as though it were any mana type to cast that spell. This was honestly pretty common in the Dimir control decks at the time of this coming out a couple years ago. Now this was a card I didn't even know was a thing, but apparently it was in Commander product. Thieving Amalgam for an Ape Snake, because we like those ape snakes. 5 and 2 black for a 6/7, and at the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, you manifest the top card of that player's library. So, so you actually take their card from the top of their deck. You can look at it if you want to, but you can't flip it. It basically becomes a 2/2 creature that then becomes, yours. Becomes a creature on your side of the field. And then whenever a creature you control but don't own dies, its owner loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. So that one might be a little difficult. Hopefully everybody has card sleeves to figure out whose is whose. But I thought that was a cool card. Honestly, it needed to be in the deck for what it did. And like I say, it was new to me. Kind of hefty, but it is a 6/7. And it does pretty good work in actually building your board. Willbreaker, 3 and 2 blue for a human wizard, 2/3. That whenever a creature an opponent controls becomes the target of a spell or ability you control, gain control of that creature for as long as you control Willbender. So, the thing about Willbender is technically she circumvents the ability that's on the stack. If I understand this correctly. Because if you're targeting a creature with a steal ability,
any gentleman here can give you use of a sword. Use of a sword?
3 months old. Hey, Tiger. Thanks for the sub. Much appreciated. But yeah, so Willbender technically steals it before you can steal it with the original effect. Because the stack goes in that order. So technically, it has a downfall because if you can't protect Willbender, then technically all of the triggers that you've created, whether they state the fact that, you know, you would have kept it or not, Willbender supersedes that, and then any time that she would then get destructed, all of those permanents. So in this deck, you're going to have to, you know, keep track of where things go. But does very similar stuff. So even if you're not doing steely stuff with your abilities or spells, this triggers automatically anyway. So that one may be one that you may want to remove or switch out, just in case you don't want the headache of trying to keep track of all that. But now we're into the copies. So whether if we can't steal it by multiple routes or individual routes, then we're going to copy it because we like it. We want it. It's on our side, right? So Fairy Artisans is a Fairy Artificer for 2/2 flyer for 4. And whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield under an opponent's control, create a token that's a copy of that creature, except it's an artifact in addition to its other types. Then, exile any other tokens that you've created with Fairy Artisans. So, anytime somebody plays a new card, non-token creature, you get a copy of it. So if it has an ETB effect, there you go. You got it. Whatever ETB effect was, you also get it. Honestly, cool card. Mirage Mirror artifact for 3, but you can pay 2, and it becomes a copy of a target artifact, creature, enchantment, or land, any, until end of turn. So this could be a, you know, a planeswalker. Oh, no planeswalker. This could be a creature that does, you know, some sort of effect to the entire board. This could be an enchantment that again benefits you in some way, shape, or form. But yeah. So is everybody G to G? Looks like Sam tried to call me already. Okay. Well, we can speed through this. So Phantom Steed. Yes. Okay. We'll just basically go through FX then. So this one is going to copy something that is yours, and create a token of it. I am on your time. So you can basically replicate something that is, well, so it creates the token when it attacks. And it also attacks in through there. Okay. Phyrexian Metamorph basically copies anything when it comes in. Sakashima copies anything that you control, and the legend rule doesn't apply as long as it's on the field, so you can create another copy of a legendary creature. Spark Double basically copies any creature or planeswalker, but you get a +1/+1 counter on it. So that's dope. Card advantage. Baleful Strix. Honestly, if you're running a blue-black deck, is basically an include. When it enters the battlefield, draw a card, Flying Death Touch. Brainstorm, draw 3 cards, put 2 into your hand. Put 2 from your hand onto the top of your library in any order. Cloudblazer and Mole Drifter, very similar. Flyer, 2/2, same amount of mana, just slightly different mana. When it enters the battlefield, for Cloudblazer, gain 2 life, draw 2 cards. For Mole Drifter, you can either have it enter and then die to draw 2 cards, or enter and have a flyer 2/2. Ponder, look to top 3 cards, put them back into onto the top of the library in any order. And then you may shuffle your library if you want to, if those 3 are just worthless. And then you get to draw a card. Reliquary Tower, you do draw a bit in this, so no maximum hand size. Thought Vessel, also no maximum hand size, also taps for colorless. Rhystic Study, if an opponent plays a spell. If they don't pay 1, then you get to draw a card. These are your ubiquitous mana artifacts. Arcane Signets, basically in any commander deck nowadays. Chromatic Lantern allows any of your lands to tap for any color. Commander Sphere, if you don't need the mana later on, because it does tap for any color in your commander's identity, you can sack it and draw a card. Soul Ring, because Soul Ring, Sad Robot, gives you a basic land, draws you a card when it dies. Temple of the False God, taps for 2. Smothering Tide. So this one, whenever an opponent draws a card, they can pay 2. If they don't, you get a treasure token, which basically allows you to sack it for any 1 mana of any color. Sacrifice. So, like I said, if you're stealing stuff from an opponent's side of the thing, you either want to get some sort of advantage off of it before you have to give it back, or you kill it. So, you can kill it to give you 2 colorless mana. You can kill it to gain you 1 life. You can kill it to give you 2 black mana. You can kill 2 things. Oh, sorry. You get 2 things back from your graveyard if you kill it. They do enter the battlefield tapped, but still. And sack a card, scry. So you get to look at the top card of your library and decide whether you want it or not. If you don't want it, it goes to the bottom of the library. Removal Suite. So Anguished Unmaking. Exile target non-land permanent. Lose 3 life. Not terrible in Commander. I kind of went with target permanent rather than creatures, or trying to make it as overarching as possible. Counterspell, it's a blue deck. I usually throw Counterspell in it because it's literally just 2 blue and it's any spell you can counter. Cyclonic Rift returns everything to owner's hands. Basically a board wipe if you go through the whole thing. Despark, which is actually a new removal card. Exile target permanent with mana cost 4 or more. Doomscar is something you can foretell, so you pay 2. Colorless, put it face down, basically exiled. It's its own area, technically. And then you can cast it for 1 and 2 white, which ends up being the same cost. So either way. But if you foretell it, I think you can... No, I guess foretell is still sorcery speed. But you destroy all creatures with this one, so it's Wrath of God. Fracture, destroy target permanent destroy target artifact, enchantment, or planeswalker. Supreme Verdict, destroy all creatures. And then Utter End, exile target non-land permanent. And then we have the Blink Suite. So a lot of what this deck is stealing stuff. And so some of the permanents say, as long as this is on the battlefield, or when it enters the battlefield, you may steal a permanent or do whatever. So I put these in for those cards that you do want to, enter multiple times, where you're going to keep the creature, or you can sacrifice it and then trigger its ability again. Blink is the effect of that, to where you're removing a creature from the battlefield for a certain amount of time, but it comes back either that turn or the next turn. So Charming Prince does that, but also Charming Prince allows you to scry 2 if you want to, gain 3 life if you need it, but then it also allows you to exile and then return it back to the battlefield. Cloud Shift, same thing. Exile target creature you control, return it to the battlefield under your control. So this is also a good thing to target stuff that you don't own. So Charming Prince says specifically that you own. If you control it because you've stolen it, if you blink it, then it doesn't have to go back. The effect that stole it is now erased, and you are now able to use it, to keep it. So that's what Conjurer's Closet's really about, because it's an artifact. At the beginning of your end step, you get to do that. You return that card onto the battlefield under your control. So you wipe the reasoning to have to give it back. Eerie Interlude is same thing. You can do this for your permanents and permanents you've stolen. Brings them back. Actually, no. Do it to your permanents, because if you do it to theirs, it goes back to their owner's control. So be wary on Eerie Interlude. But Ghostly Flicker, do it on not your permanents or permanents that you can grab more stuff with. Soul Herder, each time a creature is exiled from the battlefield, it gets a +1/+1 counter. And at the beginning of your end step, you can exile another target creature card you control and return it onto the battlefield under its owner's control. So that'll be stuff that you actually have played, because you don't want to do stuff you've stolen. Teferi's Protection, honestly, is a decent protection card in general, because your life total can't change until your next turn. You have protection from everything, and all permanents you control phase out, which basically means they are no longer there for the entirety until your next turn. And then Thassa is one of the Theros gods, and she's indestructible, 6/5 for 4. She's a god, and as long as your devotion to blue is less than 5, she isn't a creature. So devotion is however many pips you have. So you have to have 5 pips of blue for her to be a creature. And then at the beginning of your end step, as long as she's on the battlefield, whether she's a creature or not, exile up to 1 other target creature you control, and then return it to the battlefield under your control, so that you can blink something, and this stuff you can do for stuff that you've stolen. And you can also pay for it and tap something that's not on your field. And then we have the miscellaneous. These are just the last 4 cards that I put in here for utility or otherwise. Elish Norn, Grand Cenobite, 5 and 2 white for a 4/7 Praetor with Vigilance. She buffs your entire board and minuses everybody else's. -2, -2, +2/+2 on your side. Great card in white, very much in quite a few white decks in Commander. Karmic Guide is a card already in the deck. Has flying, 2/2, protection from black. At the beginning of your next upkeep, if it came under your control, you'd have to pay 5 more mana. But a lot of the times, people just sack it. When it enters the battlefield, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. So you return something that you've had to either... Elish looks like Blaziken. Fair enough. Technically, you could blink Karmic Guide at the beginning of your upkeep and not have to pay the echo cost. But interesting. Never even actually thought about that. Panharmonicon 4 for an artifact that says when an artifact or creature entering the battlefield causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. So this means you get to steal more stuff. So anytime anything has an effect where it would enter the battlefield, triggers 1 more time. So steal more things, do more stuff, gain more life, gain more cards. You name it, it does it again. And then Shadow Spear, because I had no equipment in the deck. So, equipped creature gets +1/+1, has Trample, which is always nice, Lifelink, my bread and butter. And you can either pay 1, well, you can equip it, and then you can also pay 1 while it's equipped or not. And permanents your opponent's control lose Hexproof and gain Indestructible until end of turn. And lose indestructible until end of turn. God. So if they have gods, if they have an Avacyn on the field that makes all of their permanents indestructible, you can pay 1 measly mana, and then they're not anymore till the end of the turn. And you can do that on anybody's turn, as long as this is on the field. So if one of your opponents is attacking another one of your opponents with indestructible items, you can pay 1, and then all of that damage might kill stuff. You never know. But that's Mindswipe. That's what we've got. So hopefully Sean likes his deck. I've got a few cards in here that are... I've got Exotic Orchard, which doesn't really make much difference. Technically, you can switch that for a basic land, but that basically taps for anything that an opponent's land would produce. Specifically mentioned Avacyn. So, they were really the only cards outside of lands that that were still, you know, cards in the deck. Oh, specifically mentioned Avacyn. Sorry, I thought for whatever reason my brain was on Elish Norn. Just because she's one that you see a lot. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. Since Brianna asked that question, she's in her decks. I don't think you have it in the... You at least have it in Mayel. I'm not sure if you have it in the other one. But, yes. Because that's the one that's on the top of my head. But yeah, I mean... What? I could say... Oh, what's the artifact enchantment that does all of the bull crap? Avacyn's Monument. It's something also has Avacyn in it as well. But yeah, that is the deck. So let me stop being a holdup to the rest of the team, and I don't play it in the other deck. Okay. It would be in there too. Fair. All right. So let's go back to full camp for a second.